The fire speaks now, it tells the oldest stories. Listen closely. The wood groans, a deep sigh, crackling soft and relentless. Heat pushes back the darkness of the studio amber light, bleeds onto the rough stone smell, the burning resin, the ancient pine. Flame breathe in it, breathe in, breathe out. The logs turn to gold. Then to ash this fire holds secrets. Secrets the Grand Canal. Keeps hidden beneath the surface, you watch the barge drift slowly, peacefully. You let the deep, dark sounds take you to sleep. You trust the digital lullaby, but did you ever truly wonder what truly sank below that muddy water? Ancient burden that slow barge was carrying. Was it just silk and spice and the quiet hum of commerce, or was it the forgotten silence of an emperor's darkest wishy-washy? Secret so heavy it redefined the purpose of history. Itself a purpose, hidden in plain sight in the algorithm. I am Nisrula, and this is Itronical. Do not watch, we observe. We do not listen, we decipher. You think you know? The video Fall Asleep to Chinese Grand Canal, Slow Barge, Journey Tang Dynasty, Relaxing History Travel You. Think it is merely background noise, a balm for the anxious modern Minda digital distraction eye. Promise you it is a mape, coded message, a temporal anomaly, a confession whispered by the water. The Tang Dynasty, golden age of expansion and cruelty. Journey of 1,000 miles and 10,000 hidden nights. The barge moves slowly. It must move slowly. If it moved any faster, the carefully constructed illusion would shatter. If it moved any faster, the digital current would expose the intricate rigging. The quiet repetition is the absolute key. The water slapping the lacquered hull. The low, almost imperceptible hum of the unseen mechanism. Gentle sway, the gentle hypnotic sway. This hypnotic pace, this absolute refusal of speed is deliberate. It is not simply relaxation technique. It is a profound of temporal manipulation. They want you to forget the modern clock. They want you to lose the precise boundary of now, because when time collapses, when the present dissolves, the oldest, darkest secret rises. What if this Chinese Grand Canal videos? Not history painstakingly recreated. What if it is history meticulously recorded, a genuine echo? A perfect ghost trapped in the endless digital fiber. Think of the millions of hours already consumed, millions of hours dedicated to the sight of a slow moving boat. Why? The canal itself, why? This specific epoch of the Tang Dynasty. Why this exact current, this specific direction of flow? The current flows south toward the hungry capital. The current flows south carrying necessary wealth. But the current also carries the deepest, most troubling truth. The truth about the great silent famine. They conveniently edit out the truth about the ghost barges that sail only when the night is blackest. The creator claims unimpeachable historical accuracy. But accuracy is often the thickest, most effective veil. They show you the lanterns gentle and glowing, but they carefully hide the unbelievable oppressive weight of the raw silk bales that weigh down not only the shallow hull, but the very souls, the weary breath of the peasant laborers. The sound of the oars dipping and dragging it is not the sound of gentle travel. It is the sound of brutal labor, heavy labor, repetitive, demanding, unending. Sleep to this sound, this rhythm of ancient hardship. You allow this harsh history to seep into your unconscious mind. The grand slow journey. A grand slow journey. We have been given a silent passage to the past, but that passage is guarded by the very slowness that defines the video. The Tang Dynasty barge is not sailing, it is delivering a message whispered over 1,000 years. I am Nisrula. We will peel back the waterlogged wooden layers. We will examine the grain of the digital wood. We will find the emperors lost in forbidden shipment, the final forgotten secret, hidden in the frame rate. Stay with me, now watch the embers. Glow the river demands absolute patience, but the truth demands immediate action. We begin the excavation now. The excavation begins now. Chi fire breathes. Now it crackles softly for you. The sap weep out of the pine logs, a sharp, sweet hiss of heat escaping. Feel the shield of warmth around your face, a perfect amber glow protecting us from the deep outside. We watch the Grand Canal now for peace. We watch the slow barge drift, the hypnotic journey through the Tang Dynasty. The water whispers gentle, soothing secrets. To us it offers rest, it promises sleep, but what if the slow rhythmic splash of the pole, the sound that lulls you into easy slumber? What if that sound is not history preserved, but history forgotten? What if the peace we crave, the absolute calm of the slow? Barge journey was built on a sacrifice so vast, so chilling a secret labor, so profound that the beauty we witness is simply the byproduct of unending human pain. We light the fire for comfort. They burn nothing but their own energy to move the grain to, move the tribute to move the empire inexorably forward. Listen to the sound of the barge, the gentle groan of the timbers. The video fades, the sharper edges it. Removes the sounds that claw at the brain, the relentless sound of the cough, the wet rattling. Deep in the chest, the cough of men conscripted, pulled from their fields to serve the endless flow of the water. Listen for the sounds of exhaustion. The deep silence between the splashes, that is the silence of bodies pushed beyond repair. The sound of muscle sinews screaming the captain's curse. A high, sharp sound. We stay by the fire now. Are safe from the cold. The cold they faced was not a simple chill. It was the river cold dampness that wore through the thin cotton jackets, dampness that penetrated. Bone marrow dampness that never dried. They lived in a perpetual state of penetrating moisture. The river effluvium rose at night, take cold wet breath, but settled heavy on the decks, clung to the rope it, saturated the straw mats, it made sleep a shivering. Miserable fight smelled the pine burning clean and bright here. Sharp scent of health, they smelled the river, they smelled the unwashed hemp, the rank odor of stagnant water mixing with drying mud. The smell of stale sour grain they were transporting. Smell of the communal human effluvium trapped beneath the low canvas awning. A sickening thick blanket of wet breathing bodies. The historian records the tonnage, the official records note the miles covered. Video records the beauty of the passing. Reads, does not record the color of the hands, blue and gray and permanently swollen, the hands that hauled the rope. The hands that gripped the coal slick with cold slime, the hands ruined before the men reached 30. The constant friction, the constant immersion, hands that forgot the shape of smooth things, hands that knew only the pain of rope burn. We watched the beautiful slow travel. We imagine the simple life. We think of the slow pace of the Tang Dynasty, but the pace was slow only from the outside. From the inside, the pace was relentless, a forced march against the current, against the wind, against the inevitable failure of the human body. The barge moved slowly. The life force moved rapidly out of the laborers, consumed by the state, consumed by the emperor's need, consumed by the cold, the unforgiving cold. Look closely at the water in the video. It is dark, deep, mysterious water. It seems so smooth, so tranquil. It hides the currents that rip the rudder. It hides the unexpected snag. It hides the men who slipped silently overboard, lost to the demands of the Grand Canal. Moral grays are simple. Our peace is often paid for by another's suffering. Relaxation is often dependent on forgetting the cost of the barge, the cost of the journey, the cost of the smooth, slow, uninterrupted water stay. By the fire, let the heat warm your hands now. And think of the men moving, the grain moving, the world without heat, without hope, without dreams, just the endless, slow, unavoidable. The bird. Sound of the pole, the endless pole that is the true soundtrack of the Tang Canal. The flames rose, they licked the air. A sound like silk tearing wood, crackling sharp and swift. The amber glow painted the studio walls red and gold. You could smell it, the sweet, acrid scent of burning pine, of forgotten paper. Everything burned, everything vanished, except the file. This one file, this one memory stream. They say the original footage of the Grand Canal barge journey was meant to disappear. They say the sound wasn't water at all. They say the Tang Dynasty journey holds a secret whispered by the water itself, a secret about who is actually on that barge, who is traveling that slow, dark water. The journey lingers, the journey remains. Spoke of fire, but fire cannot touch what is already moving, always moving. The Grand Canal video survived because it was not still. It was perpetual motion, a perfect loop of liquid time. Look at the screen. Look closer at the reflection in the water. It is not just the barge moving, it is your mind slowing down. This is the legacy. The legacy is rest in a world that screams for speed, for immediate action, for the next click. The Tang Dynasty barge offered resistance, a rebellion of slowness. The sound, the deep thrumming resonance of wood against water. It is not just white noise. It is an instruction. An instruction to forget, to let go. But there's a dark shadow in this relaxation. The mystery of the traveler. We watch the boat move north, or Perhaps south, who can tell in that endless river of time. But the creator, the editor, the one who assembled this dream and delivered it, to us vanished the moment the view count peaked. A ghost editor, they called him, a master of the meditative cut. No name, no trace, no IP signature. That lasted more than a flicker. They left behind only the water and the wood and the overwhelming sense of distance from our time, distance from our anxiety, distance from the truth. The mystery is woven into the texture of the footage itself. They use techniques, the archives show us techniques that should not have existed in the early days of this platform. The way the light bends the way. The shadows elongate is too perfect, too rendered. The grain of the wood feels tactile, realer than the desk you sit at now. We seek a source, we chase the signal, but the signal always dissolves into the current, always flows downstream away from us. Why did they choose the Tang Dynasty? Why that specific slow barge? Why did the recording equipment seem to capture things the human eye should not see things in the periphery? Small movements on the bank that are gone before you can identify them. A flicker of movement, a breath held, a presence acknowledged. The file itself is an anomaly, an impossible compression of data that should overload any server, yet it runs smoothly, it runs endlessly. The digital artifact of a forgotten kingdom, we are told, is a simple relaxation aid, a digital sleeping pill. But if you listen long enough, if you let the hypnosis take hold, you hear the other sounds beneath the gentle lap of the water. Beneath the heavy creak of the rudder, you hear the voices, not loud, not clear, but whispers on the wind along the canal bank, voices that speak an older language than Mandarin voices that speak of cargo. What was the cargo on that slow barge journey? Was it silk? Was it spice? Was it tribute to the emperor? Or was it something living, something hidden, something desperate to escape the slow journey? This brings us to the forgotten secret, the one they tried to burn away in the cleansing fire. Logs, the real logs, show that the Grand Canal journey footage was originally recorded not for relaxation, not for history, but for surveillance. A perfect continuous record designed to watch the progress of a specific individual, a political prisoner, perhaps. Or maybe something far more valuable. The camera was not passive, it was watching. And if you watch long enough, if you fall deep into the water dream, you begin to realize the camera is not the only thing watching. The legacy of the video is slowness, the mystery is the watcher. The legacy is the journey, the mystery is the passenger. They say the creator of the video vanished because they were afraid of what they had captured. Afraid of the passenger's face eventually appearing in the frame. We must find the original unedited reel. We must peel back the relaxation layer and see the reality of the Tang Dynasty journey, the true passenger. The true reason the barge moves so slowly through the night, and that brings us to the next step. We have uncovered a single frame of footage that predates the final edit, a frame showing the barge making a necessary stop at a lonely checkpoint, a place they called the Gate of Whispers, a place where the watcher reveals himself. Next, we decode the checkpoint, we examine the logbooks, we find the name of the man who organized the journey, the man who paid for the slow, endless transit. His name was not historian. His name was executioner. Look for the man who paid for the silence. We look for the executioner's log. The real journey begins now. We remember the fire, the lingering warmth, the amber glow that stained the walls. We talked about the crackle, the relentless, hypnotic rhythm of pine giving way to ash. It was the sound of something ending, something releasing, just like the sleep you seek when you click that video, fall asleep to Chinese Grand Canal slow barge journey, Tang Dynasty, the Grand Canal. Video is not simply background noise. It is a ritual, a meticulously engineered escape hatch from the relentless pressure of the we left one with the heat of the burn on our skin. Now we move to the cool, damp silence of the water. The water of the Grand Canal. Look at the image. Look at the screen. The slow barge, the relentless slow barge, it moves at exactly the speed of deep delta waves. Sleep, not too fast, not too slow. It is the perfect tempo of non-thought. Pace is deliberate. It is hypnotic. It is the rhythm of the oar dipping just beneath the surface. The subtle sound of the water parting. Listen, that sound is the sound of history attempting to To soothe youth, Tang Dynasty was a time of unimaginable stress and splendor, an empire built on silk and bureaucracy, a lifeline built of waterway. 1,000 miles of movement, 1,000 miles of labor, 1,000 miles of absolute required quietude. Why? Tang, why this specific era? Because the secret lies in the cargo. It is not just rice, not just grain feeding the northern capitals. Barges carried something far more valuable to the emperors. They carried silence. They required absolute peace during the transport of imperial goods. Any disruption, any sudden noise, any break in the rhythm meant death. So the journey itself became a meditation. The boatmen, the barge captains, the guards, they learned to move without sound, to speak in whispers, to let the water dictate the only acceptable tempo. The water, the deep jade water, became a mirror for the collective subconscious of an entire empire. Every ripple, every eddy, every smooth expanse, feel the low resonance of the wood beneath the waterline. It is a dull humming, thrumming, the sound your own body makes when it finally consents to rest. We are not watching history, we are absorbing its tranquility. The scent of wet earth, the faint smell of musk and river reeds, the distant sound of a single bamboo flute, not a melody of joy, but a melody of necessary silence. The barge glides, slow procession toward nothing but the horizon, and that horizon never gets closer, is perpetually just out of reach. This is the beauty of the sleep genre. The promise of arrival is never fulfilled. The journey is the only destination. We think we are watching relaxation. We are actually watching the careful reconstruction of imperial hypnotic methods. The emperors of the Tang Dynasty understood that power was maintained not just through force, but through the control of attention, through the cultivation of perfect boredom. Boredom is the antechamber to deep hypnotic suggestion. Boredom is the quiet preparation for the secret we are seeking. The barge is carrying more than silence. Now it is carrying your attention. It is carrying the weight of your worries, and slowly, it deposits them into the deep jade water, deposits them into the Grand Canal. Look at the mass, the shadow it casts on the water. It is long, it is slender, it is stretching like the slow exhale you take just before you fall into the deep waterfall, into the deep sleep. Next, we must explore this specific geometry of the Tang barge itself. Why was it shaped to maximize not speed but stillness? The forgotten architecture of imperial sleep engineering. Secrets hidden in the curve of the hull. The water is waiting. The glide continues. The hypnotic movement is relentless. The fire holds us here. It breathes deep breaths of pitch and pine, a temporary border against the relentless cold. Cold that seeped into the Tang Dynasty barges. The cold that the emperors never felt, but the men who dragged the silk and the rice, they knew that cold intimately. They knew the cold of the Grand Canal. It was a cold that started in the river Muta, slow, creeping, paralyzing chill. Started in the water and climbed into the bone. It was the cold of unending, laborless enclose. Now hear the crackle of our dying embers. Imagine instead the sound of the tracking rope, the rough hemp saw sawing against the muscle of the shoulder. Soft tearing sound, tearing from bone hope, tearing from the heart. That is the true soundtrack of the slow barge journey, not the gentle lapping water that the videos promise you. No, it was the constant grunt. The sound of 100 men pulling 1 ton of tribute rice. The weight of the water, the weight of the rice, the weight of the emperor's will, always the weight, and the smell. Fire smells clean now of smoke and dry wood, but the river barges smelled of everything humanity tries to forget. They smelled of sour millet. Porridge clinging to the rags, they smelled of human waste mixed into the stagnant backwaters. They smelled of old fish and fermented grain and the sharp, terrifying scent of sickness. Smell of fever, the smell of despair. Smell so heavy you could taste it on your tongue. Metallic taste like fear. And copper, they tried to mask it. They tried to burn incense. But the river was stronger. The river held the smells of 1,000,000 sacrifices. We watch that video seeking relaxation. We seek the piece of water moving slowly. But that slowness was purchased. It was purchased with lives. It was purchased with hands swollen raw and splitting open in the damp. Winter air hands that never healed. That is the moral grayness of that glorious Tang Golden Age. The grandeur was built on suffering. The Beauty was built on the brute fact of conscription. You either starved in your village waiting for the drought to take you, or you signed onto the canal, labor a slow death by exhaustion, or a faster death by the river's treacherous current. That was the only choice offered. A trade a desperate bargain with the dynasty. The canal was not a pathway to prosperity for the laborers. It was a conveyor belt of necessary human erosion. They moved the silk, they moved the porcelain, they moved the tribute. They were themselves moved inexorably toward the grave. They were cogs in a massive hydraulic machina. Machine powered by bone and muscle and nothing more. Look into the fire, watch the amber glow. It is the color of 100,000 sunsets. They missed sunsets seen only through the fog of their weariness. They pulled until their backs were bowed. Like the junks they towed. They told until the cold of the water entered their very spirit. And when they stopped pulling, when they finally collapsed. By the riverbank, the only sound was the wind carrying the thin music of the rich barges gliding past. Barges carrying nobles wrapped in fur and silk hearing. Only the soft, gentle rhythm of the oars. Never hearing the ghosts whispering in the current. Ghosts of the men who paid for that rhythmic piece. The cold remains outside the light of this fire. Reminds us that history is not a pleasant lullaby. It is a harsh truth told in the language of sweat and mud. An endless cold. The water flows slow. It carries the weight of 1,000 years. The silt settles soft on the ancient stone. The Grand Canal is a scar of ambition. It is the longest memory ever etched into earth. We watched the barge glide slow in the quiet dark of the digital void. We forget that this was a river of sweat, a river of pain, a river of dynasty. It swallowed cities, nourished empires, and when the fire came, when the quick heat turned the pine to ash, when the scent of burning resin filled the night, the canal barely shrugged. Water kept its level low and steady. It remembers the great floods. It remembers the great wars. What is one small burst of human flame against the ceaseless patience of the flow? The flow, the steady. Flow legacy is not what we build legacy. It is what refuses to wash away. The stones remain cold and slick with moss of the Tang Dynasty are still carried on the breeze, a whisper of history, a heavy whisper, but the water hides secrets deep. Beneath the churning mud, where the river is darkest, the mystery pools and waits we. Search for answers in the crackling wood we analyze the pattern of the burn. They said it was faulty wiring, a simple short circuit. They say a narrative too easy, too clean. Archive footage is incomplete, it is missing entirely. 5 minutes right before the sound changed, the 5 minutes before the scream went black. What did the slow barge carry than what was revealed in that moment of digital grace that demanded such a violent erasure? The silence around this forgotten detail is louder than any shout. Is a chosen silence a manufactured stillness? The people involved vanished like morning mist. The editors, the archivists, the quiet men who uploaded the stream, they left no forwarding address. They left only a residue, a faint scent of something unresolved, something intentionally buried deep under the heavy weight of time. Time that flows like the river, so we are left here at the end of the second telling with the enduring structure of the canal and the gaping hole of the sudden fire. The structure survives. The truth hides. It hides in plain sight sometimes in the footnotes of forgotten reports, in the discarded drafts of the official inquiry. There's one consistency. In all the confusion, one persistent whisper that refuses to be silenced. Does not concern the barge itself. Does not concern the crew or the cargo. It concerns the camera, the specific piece of technology used to capture the slow barge journey. It was not standard equipment, they whisper. It was a prototype, a relic of forgotten science. It was designed to capture more than light. It was designed to capture depth, to capture echoes of the past. And the man who built that camera, he was not an engineer of light. He was a cartographer of shadows, a maker of strange maps, a map that promises to lead us far from the water, far from the soothing sound of the slow current. It will lead us instead to a cold mountain province, to the edge of the Gobi Desert, to a village rumored only in ancient texts, village built entirely of white jade. The camera saw the jade, it captured the stone. We must follow the cartographer now. We must follow the strange coordinates, because the secrets of the canal are not in the Water itself, they are hidden in the lens that saw it. What did that lens capture? In the 5 missing minutes, we must find the White Jade village. We must find the man who drew the shadow maps. Next time we leave the river behind and we begin the long journey across the dry sand to see what happens when history becomes stone, when the desert finally speaks. What will the sand reveal? The fire still burns, you feel it now. The memory of pine and smoke. The memory of pine and smoke still clinging to. You remember the sound, the relentless crackle of dry wood giving way, the splitting sound before the darkness returned, and amber glow blinding against the amber glow, staining the edges of the screen. A raw heat that reached through the centuries, but the fire is merely the echo of a moment, the echo of a single night of forgetting. We move now to the water. The water flows relentlessly. The Great Canal flows relentlessly under the Tang sun, the slow barge. Journey, this hypnotic journey, this slow barge travel, is it truly for relaxation? Or is it the deepest form of historical surveillance, a mandated pace? Did you ever ask why the barge moves so slow? Agonizingly, beautifully slow is not speed they feared it. Is disruption. The slow pace was the law of the state. We are not watching a casual journey. We are watching the tax system moving, the rice, the silk, the copper coin, all traveling at the precise minimum speed required to maintain imperial stability. Look closer at the slow sweep of the horizon, the repetitive curve of the willow branches, the man pulling the barge. He is not merely a figure of tranquility. He is a functionary of the Grand Dynasty. Every push of the pole is measured. The emperor demands stability. Emperor demands the grain arrives. If the journey is fast, then rebels can hide the cargo. If the journey is fast, then accounting fails. The barge journey, the Tang Dynasty barge journey, is a meditation on bureaucracy. A mile an hour precisely. Timed, a pace designed to prevent impatience, a pace designed to crush spontaneous thought. Feel the weight of the water against the hull. The slow scraping of the wooden hull against the mud banks. The slow scraping, a sound engineered for safety. For the state, not safety. For the traveler, the silence is manufactured. The peace is enforced. If the barge stopped for too long, if the sound of the water changed its rhythm, a soldier would be watching, a signal would be sent, the peace you fall asleep to. Is the peace of total control. The gentle lapping sound. It masks the distant gong of the census collector. It masks the quiet footfall of the Imperial Guard. You're listening to the sound of infrastructure working perfectly. Slow travel dictates everything. The type of rope, the way the heavy mats are woven, the scent of the oil used to treat the planks. The subtle geometry of the rudder, all constrained by the required speed watch, the reflection of the sky stretching endlessly in the slow-moving current. The current is merely a mirror reflecting the unshakable power. The power that built this artificial river. The power that keeps the barge moving at this deliberate crawl. This is the secret of the Grand Canal video. It is a perfect expression of governmental patience, a willingness to expend tremendous time and resource, simply to ensure that nothing surprises them. They wanted the journey to feel eternal, not for your relaxation, but for their stability to communicate to every peasant, every merchant, every official, that the Tang system was too immense, too slow, too powerful to ever be hurried to. Deep to ever be circumvented. The hypnotic sway is the illusion of freedom. The hypnotic sway is the enforcement of order. You are now immersed in that order. You are watching history's ultimate sleeper agent. The slow barge moves on, and you watch and you willingly surrender your sense of speed, because that slow movement, that relentless, beautiful slow movement, is the sound of the fire finally being extinguished, not by water, but by time itself. The fire breathes low, now a dull ruby heart in the shelter. The heat is a small deception, a beautiful, beautiful lie. It pushes back the pervasive dampness and smell of the river mud, the sharp tang of the cold. We sit here, safe here by the amber glow, and watch the wood turn silver. Listen to the crackle, the soft pop of pine sap, exploding, a tiny sound of warmth. A sound of temporary peace, but outside the fire's reach. Real cost. Waits. The cow was not tranquil. It was a massive artery, pulsed with movement. No, the gentle drift you seek when you close your eyes, but the forced pace of the empire. The barges moved not by whim, but by debt, by levy, by the whip of necessity. Think of the smells of the Grand Canal. than at the imagined jasmine or silk perfume, no. That is the history they sell you. Real history smells of human reality. It smells of cheap, rough cloth soaked in brine. It smells of fermentation, the stale, sour scent of grain stored too long. It smells of sweat and fear, fear, fear. The bargemen, their backs bent double. They smelled of the river itself, fish, and the iron scent of their own exhaustion. It was a scent that never left steam, a heavy cloak woven into their very skin. And the cold was everywhere. It was not just the air that froze their breath. The cold was structural. It was the cold calculation of the state man the impossible, tonnage doing impossible. Speed the cold was the distance between the emperor's palace, the bone-deep ache, and a man's shoulder. The cold was the knowledge that if the barge failed, if the cargo was lost, their children would starve. Look at the fire, how it seduces. US with its light, it makes us forget the wet, rough hamperopeth that rubbed the skin, or it makes us forget the unending wind that whistled across the flat plains of Shandong, whipping the water into a hateful chop. We see slow barge journey, Tang Dynasty. Relaxing travel, they saw endless work, Tang Dynasty, inescapable burden. This slow movement was their entire life sentence, no reprieve, no pause, no respite. Sounds we hear in the video are edited, calm, softened, smoothed. The real canal roared, the sound of straining timber, the groan of the hull, the curses of the trackers pulling the ropes, the slap of the river against the banka. Sound of constant erosion, the human voice worn down to a rasp, shouting into the wind, shouting against the inevitability. Did not choose this hypnotic journey. They were compelled by the economics of survival. This is the gray area we must always acknowledge when we seek our peace in history's mirror. Our relaxation is built upon their absolute necessity, their misery. Cleanse our meditative moment. The fire is burning down now. The embers are sinking low. The orange glow is fading to a soft red pulse. It mimics the exhausted pulse. And the neck of a man who has pulled a barge against the current for 14 hours. The fire comforts us. It demands nothing from us, but the Grand Canal demanded everything, their strength, their time, their freedom, their very breath. Remember the cold, remember the hunger, remember the smell of fear. Every inch of that beautiful, calm, slow-moving water was paid for in human. Costa's silent scream echoing in the quiet currents, a burden of reality beneath the surface. Calm, the barge slides on. The scream, but the tracker is still pulling out, always pulling in. The shadows of our comfort be the warmth of our deceptive fire. The barge moves, still a dark silhouette against the low amber sun. Journey never ending, the water whispers its own. Endless chronicle. We followed the path of the Shadow Weaver, the creator who offered us the stillness of the Tang Dynasty, the balm of slow history. Gentle narcotic for the panicked modern mind, the Grand Canal, it lives beyond the screen, it lives in. Sound of the slow wooden hull, the rhythmic dip of the pole, the sigh of the silk-laden water against the ancient stone. This is the legacy, the profound absence of speed, the quiet victory over the frantic thumb scroll. He gave us this gift. He gave us the silence. He gave us this silence. This slowness is the mystery. Now, who is the hand that held the camera so steady? Who chose this singular vision, this refusal of climax, this denial of the jump cut? We searched the archives of the digital bed. We traced the echoes of the abandoned server farms. We found nothing but the heat. Ghost heat of the forgotten data. He covered his tracks perfectly. He was a master of disappearance. He knew the value of void. He knew that the most enduring art is the one that asks no questions. It simply moves. The barge moves still. And this movement, this perpetual flow, it becomes the answer and the question simultaneously. Water remembers the Tang Dynasty boats. It remembers the sweat of the haulers. It remembers the imperial grain ships, but what does it remember of the man who filmed it, the man who shared this silent vigil with millions? The digital footprint vanished, washed away by the slow motion tide of the canal itself. He did not seek fame. He sought permanence. He sought the quiet resistance to the machine that demands attention. Demanded patience instead. He demanded that you simply watch, that you simply breathe, that you simply let the gentle scrape of the wood against The bank low your heart rate down, down, down. He achieved the sublime. He created something so deeply restful that its very existence is revolutionary, a revolution of repose, rebellion of quietude. This is the legacy of the Grand Canal sleep video. Testament to the power of the anonymous artist, the artist who chose the shadow over the spotlight, the shadow over the noise, the silence over the scream, but anonymity is a fragile armor and silence can be a deep deceptive well. We thought we understood. The sacrifice, the burning of the original master file, the fire we spoke of, touch again to the perfect creation. We believe the fire consumed the evidence. We believe the legacy was solely in the surviving footage. The barge moves, and still we wrong. We're so elegantly wrong because the truth of the video is not about who filmed it, is not about where it was stored. It is about what was hidden within the image itself. The true forgotten secret was not the identity of the creator, it was the identity of the setting. We accepted the history, the Tang Dynasty dating. We accepted the simple, quiet reality of the waterway, but look closer, look not at the water, but at the structure. Listen, not to the gentle lapping, but to the deep reverberation in the sound. Mix the resonance of a particular wood that was harvested centuries before the Tang Dynasty began. A wood that whispers of a technology that should not exist on that slow-moving. Barge, forgotten material. A terrifying clue, the barge is moving. Yes, but where is it truly going? What era does that strange, heavy timber belong to? And if the time is wrong, if the history is a deliberate fiction, then who built the boat, who chartered this slow, silent voyage? And what exactly was the fire hiding? Not the origin of the video, but the origin of the wood, the impossible wood. Next, we find the shipwright scroll, the terrifying inventory of the barge's construction. The truth of the timber and the water, and the time begins to crackle. I remember the fire bubbled first, then the cedar planks caught fire. The scent of burning pine oil choked the wind. It was not a quick fire, it was a deep, hungry, slow destruction. We watched it eat the ledgers, we watched it eat the maps. The flames were not red. They were a blinding, terrifying amber and or hell, consuming the edges of history. Crackling sound was not music, it was the high shriek of wood turning to history, turning to ash. We watched it turn everything to ash. We watched it turn everything to dust, but even the hottest fire leaves a shadow, and even the deepest ash retains a whisper of the truth. And that whisper, that faint ghost of truth, is exactly what we seek now on the longest river of history, the Grand Canal. We are in 4 of Waikiki Chronicle. We follow the ghost barge, the slow, silent vessel moving through the Tang Dynasty. The video is Fall Asleep to Chinese Grand Canals, Low, Barge, Journey. Tang Dynasty, relaxing history travel. We are told to relax, we are told to drift, we are told to let the steady flow of the water pull us towards sleep, but Nisrula must ask, what are we truly drifting away from when we choose to sleep to this specific sound? What history is the water drowning out? The fire took the physical records, but the water remembers. The Grand Canal remembers everything that sunk, everything that was pushed overboard, everything that was carried too far. This is the great spine of the Middle Kingdom more than a waterway. It was a weapon of unparalleled imperial control, the video shows. A smooth passage. The video shows us low, beautiful banks. The camera angle hides the true cost of the earth, move the rock broken, the lives spent. We see a slow barge, a gentle pace. We feel safe, but the pace is a lie designed for modern comfort. The Tang Dynasty barge never moved this slow, unless it was stalled by the thousands of vessels ahead. The canal was not built for reflection. It was built for exhaustion. It was built for speed, desperate speed. The speed of the empire demanding its taxes. Its tribute, its grain. Think of the silk. We watched the water lapping against the sides. We forget the silk, the precious silk, the massive bales of silk. That silk did not move for pleasure. That silk moved under armed guard, driven by the need of the court. Hundreds and hundreds of miles away. If the barge was slow, it meant ruin. If the barge was slow, it meant theft. If the barge was slow, it meant hunger in the capital. The slow, hypnotic pace of this modern digital journey is the ultimate historical erasure. Are hypnotized by the illusion of peace, but this water carried iron. This water carried salt. This water carried the heavy burden of the dynasty's entire food supply. Every meter of this massive artery meant forced labor, meant famine in the fields that were left untended. It meant thousands of nameless workers who dug this trench and were swallowed by the muck and the mud and the ambition of the emperor. Along the Grand Canal is history's longest tomb we were asked to drift to sleep over. Tomb, we listen to the steady rhythm of the pole dipping into the water. The sound is soothing, the sound is repetitive, the sound is designed to anchor us to the present moment of safety, but that rhythm, that very sound, is the heartbeat of millions. Of exhausted lives, the laborers pushed. The soldiers marched beside the bank, guarding the grain. The water remembers the sweat. It remembers the strain. Video gives us the journey. It removes the urgency. It removes the cruelty. Removes the reality. Of a single man steering a massive burden against the tyranny of time, we look at the beautiful, tranquil reflections of the Tang trees. We forget the constant pressure of taxation. The slow pace is the forgotten secret. It is the lie that lets us sleep. It allows us to absorb the power of the empire without confronting the violence required to build it. It is history detoxified for consumption, and so we must ask ourselves, why do we crave this specific sanitized slow motion history? Why do we choose the sound of hidden history as our lullaby? We watch, we drift, we forget. We watch, we drift, we forget the cost. We watch the water, we forget the fire. The fire breathes loa, hungry orange sound, a slow, deep whooshan, then the crackling. Wood soft pine sending up a scent of sweet sugar smoke kite holds us here by the edge of the Grand Canal video, but it cannot hide the cold. The cold is the truth of the Tang Dynasty. The cold is the moral gray. Watch the slow barge journey. Hear the hypnotic lapping of the water, but we forget the chill that sunk into the bones of the men who pulled that peace we seek. Peace we seek. Feel the warmth on your cheek. Now SRL tells you feel and then imagine the other Senevi side, facing the black water, the endless heavy breath of the canal, the wind slicing through threadbare hemp. The men who did not fall asleep, they only fell down. Moral grays are not simple colors, they are the smell of the mud mixed with the iron. Taste of exhaustion. The barge moves slowly, yes, hypnotically, slowly for relaxation, but that speed, that slow, deliberate pursuit is not leisure, it was the pace of near death pace of men dragging tons of grain after relentless ton while their muscles screamed unhard beneath the sound of the slow water. What does true exhaustion smell like? It smells like stale sweat and sulfur. It smells like rice that soured 2 days ago. It smells like the wet earth giving way and the sharp tang of sickness. That had no Tang Dynasty, named just the cold, inevitable closing in. We watch the beautiful shadows on the water, the amber glow of the small lantern. We romanticize the journey, forget the sheer relentless wetness. The water was not just seen as it was a constant enemy seeping into the dock, soaking the clothing, drawing the heat out of the body. Cold was the silent executioner of the canal, the fire shifts sending up a brief spirea, momentary. Brilliant flicker, and it reminds you that every glow of civilization or a golden age, momentary. Great canal, built for eternal trade was. Fueled by something burning, and often what was burning was Mang burning down to his last cinder, his last breath. Spent on pulling the rope, the heavy hemp rope against the shoulder. The sound of the Grand Canal was not just lapping, it was the groan. Low rhythmic groan of the thick rope straining against the windlass, of heavy footsteps. In the mud, endless squelched feet that never dried feet that carried the weight of the Tang Empire. Weight of the Golden Dynasty listen close beyond the hypnotic water. Soundless and close to the memory. You hear the heavy breathing, the desperate, shallow gasps off men who were always cold away as hungry. Always praying for the dawn, but dreading the day's work it brought. The barge moved slowly, best the price of speed was too high. The price of the empire was the human. Body in the body could only sustain that slow pace, deliberate crawl toward the horizontal, crawl across the gray line. The men knew the grays, they lived in the gray light before dawn. They lived by the cold smell of the silt. They were the forgotten. Secret we mention at the secret buried beneath the relaxing history travel tag. Their sacrifice makes your sleep peaceful. Their exhaustion makes your viewing hypnotic. This piece is bought with the oldest current aching muscleth, endless repetition. Cold that never leaves, cold that never leaves, and armies. Willow H watches the Flameth amber glow warms my face, and I ask you, is the journey truly relaxing when you feel the cold, biting truth of the Tang Canal, the inescapable cold, the slow hum of the river never ceases, the water moves, but the memory stays for. Ends here, but the journey deepens. We spoke of the stone, the mortar, the sweat, the thousands who carved a blue artery throughout the brown earth of China. They built it for rice. They built it for silk. They built it for the emperor's long gaze. The legacy is not just the flow itself. It is the silence that hangs among the reeds. Silence that remembers the crackling sound, labor, the disease, the broken spine. The foundations of this empire were not just laid in rock. They were laid in sorrow. Listen close to the water now. The soft lapping against the hull speaks of 1 billion tons of grain. It speaks of the endless taxes paid, but the river is a keeper of secrets. It only tells the stories it wishes to tell. The history books are thick with the official scrolls, the great decrees, the glorious barges of state. But what of the forgotten cargo? What of the knowledge too dangerous to record? The river carried more than goods. It carried the future. And the forgotten past, the Tang Dynasty used this channel as a vein of pure light connecting north to south, mind to stomach, but every light casts a shadow, and deep in the silt of the deepest cuts lies a mystery unaddressed by scholars. We talk of engineering, marvels of locks and dams in the perfect gradient, but the true marvel was the human will to bend nature, the will to endure. In that enduring strength, there are gaps, there are blanks, there are echoes. The old masters knew things we have forgotten. They understood the way the earth breathes, as they knew how to move mountains with intention, not just with brute force. Look at the curve of the canal bank, now softened by 1,000 years of moss. The amber glow of the setting sun catches the soft fine sediment. It smells of ancient dust and the scent of burning pine from the distant villages. The legacy is simple. It is still here. It persists, but the mystery is complex. It grows with every passing year. What happened to the sacred cargo? The specific blueprints of the most ancient locks. Were they lost to flood? Were they destroyed by war? Were they simply hidden away, placed under the protection of the earth itself? The barge you're currently following moves so slowly, so deliberately it floats over untold stories, silver, sunken treasures, and lost technologies. The smooth wake you see trailing behind Yusi's, erasing the trace of every moment. Just as history smooths over the violent truths, we have seen the triumph of the canal, golden age of transport, the wealth it created. But we must now look deeper. We must look beneath the surface where the water is dark and cold for. The Grand Canal was also a path for the strange, a highway for the forbidden things that traveled by night and never documented things. Carried under specific instruction to be delivered to temples far in the west or buried in tombs deep in the east. What spiritual cargo? Non-material treasure was deemed so vital that its transit was erased from all official records. 4 ends with this question. The Grand Canal is a serpent of stone and water, but what did the serpent swallow next? Time. We descend, we move beneath the surface, we search for the deepest channel. The channel where the water runs black, the forbidden artifacts, the forgotten technology, the secret library that lies submerged in the cold, unforgiving silt. We seek the hidden truth of Tang Bargesan, the unsettling reason why certain things never reach their destination. Joanne. Me for 5 as the canal reveals its dark cargo. Fire returned, always a memory of heat. The ancient pine snapped loud, a crackling hunger. Amber glow swallowed the screen, whole swallowed the world outside the frame. We felt the blistering heat, then scent of burning pitch, and ancient wood watched the smoke spiral. Slow, but tonight we look to water, the vast wet breath of the Tang Dynasty. The Grand Canal offers sleep, a promise of peace, a hypnotic balm. But ask yourself this deep down, what forgotten secret was etched into the hull of every slow barge? What cargo was truly carried in the dark Tang waters? It was not rice alone, never rice alone. The river flows, it flows. The water holds us in its current. Loop, a stream, a digital river. We are watching history breathe. We are watching history sleep, but history never sleeps, not truly, and only pretends to drift. This journey, this slow drift into the Tang heart of China. Video promises rest. It whispers of a barge journey, a vessel moving with infinite calm. Slow barge, slow. Perfect rhythm for the brain to surrender, for the eye to close, for the mind to yield. The canal is long 2,000 kilometers of engineered stillness. Was built on sweat and sorrow, on the forced labor of countless souls to hear the lapping water. Gentle slosh against the wooden sides, the hypnotic sound of water on wood, but do you hear the echo of the worker's breath? The silent ache of those who dug the silt, who moved the mud, who channeled the endless river. We seek relaxation. We seek the slow pulse, the escape from the fast modern terror. We press play for the low hum for the assurance of continuity, a world where the only thing that moves fast is the current of sleep. The Grand Canal whispers Tang it, whispers Empire it, whispers logistics it, whispers the movement of grain and soldiers and secrets. The barges moved necessities. Yes, they moved silk and they moved salt, but they also moved power. They moved the invisible weight of a collapsing dynasty. Watch the water, the green patina of the slow current, the banks blurring just slightly at the edges. This is the illusion of timelessness. The barge moves at a pace that defies urgency. Deliberate slowness, a mesmerizing pace, is a pace designed to empty the mind, to make you forget the source of the water, to make you forget the cost of the construction. The history is buried deep beneath the relaxing travelogue beneath. The soothing ambient tones. We are floating on a river of forgotten effort, an effort so massive, so generational, that the only way to process it now is to fall asleep to it, to let the history become a lullaby, a rhythmic sound without sharp edges. But Nasrullah asks you tonight, as the barge passes the ancient brickwork, as the sun sets in that slow orange haze, are we truly resting, or are we participating in a great forgetting? Is the slow journey a path to peace, or is it a beautiful mechanism of historical erasure? The barge floats, the water flows, the Tang Dynasty sleeps in the footage, and we watch, we wait, we drift, we seek the secret hidden deep in the gentle rocking motion of the hull. The slow barge carries more than rice, it carries the heavy weight of the past. Tonight we will feel that weight. We will feel the silt beneath the calm. We will watch the flow, the slow flow, and ask why this pace, this hypnotic repetition was necessary to hold an empire together, and why it holds our attention now. It flows, endlessly flows. The fire breathes low, now a heavy amber glow. Pine pitch crackles softly a sigh. In the long shadows we sit here, watch the heat bloom, smell the burnt sugar of the drying sap. We forget what the fire hides, we forget the cold outside the frame. The cold that made the barges move so slow, so smooth, the slow pace of the Grand Canal, the gentle sway that lulls you to sleep, that pace was bought by absolute cold, the deep, relentless cold of dawn on the Yangtze plains. Think of the scent, not the clean river water you imagine, but the heavy smell of wet hempropia rope. Thick as a man's wrist, always taut, the scent of stale, sweet mixed with frozen mud and dried fish. That is the hidden perfume of the Tang Dynasty canal. The relaxing history travel it demands you close your eyes to the human cost debt. Is the hypnotism of efficiency. The water moves slow. The water moves slow because the men who pulled the water moved with the pace of utter exhaustion, their breath frosted white. Instantly, a cloud of suffering released with every step. They wore thick padded cotton, but the padding soaked the chill, soaked the spray from the barge wake, and it became heavy. Every step was the negotiation with the mud that sucked the leather from their feet, the mud that held them down for the next relentless step. And we sit here by the fire, warm and safe. We call it peace. Canal offers peaceful journey into historical tranquility, but that tranquility was built on painted mechanical rhythm of pain. Look at the embers, how they hold their shape for a moment, then crumble. Lives of the trackers were like those embers holding a spark of life until the relentless tow of the rope finally made them crumble. The moral gray is not in. The grand design, the design was magnificent. The design was necessary for the empire to breathe. The moral gray is in the silence. The silence of the viewer who accepts the journey but refuses the price. We love the steady, hypnotic sound of the water lapping. The hull, we cherish that repetitive, soothing sound, but do we hear the other sound, constant low moan of the rope, sing-jing-zing, against the cold? Leather harness has a sound of absolute friction, absolute resistance. The cold bites deep. The cold bites deep, and they cannot stop. To stop means the barge stalls. To stall means punishment. To move slow is necessary. To move is all that matters. Sleep you find in the journey. Deep, restful sleep it is subsidized by the lack of sleep, aching vigilance. Of the men on the towpath, they walked mile after mile, watching the water, watching the Bargathir shoulders, permanently. Voida. Testament to the weight of trade, the weight of rice, the weight of silk, the weight of an empire, needing its long, thin water. Highway the Tang Dynasty was glorious. Its poetry was crystalline. Its canals were flowing arteries of power. Those arteries flowed not with pure water, but with the continuous unseen struggle of man against mudmen, against cold man, against the unending. Rope we return to the fire, the crackling wood mocks the cold it, offers a false respite, a momentary forgetting. This canal journey is beautiful, but its beauty is a heavy amber. Deal drawn tight across the faces of the lost, the ones who labored for your rest, the ones who froze so you could fall asleep to history. They are the true chronometers of the Tang slow barge. Their heartbeats were the engine. Their suffering was the hypnotic rhythm. We forget the sweat, the oil, the burning ache. We forget that every single hypnotic minute of that smooth river travel was a transaction paid in human frost. We watch, we relax, we drift, but the cold bites deep, the rope pulls taut, and the canal flows on flowing, forever flowing, slow flowing, terribly slow. The barge moves still. The slow journey persists long after the screen goes dark. The enduring legacy of the Grand Canal footage it is not merely relaxation, it is a blueprint for stillness. Quiet rebellion against the endless clamor of the digital sphere. It taught us how to breathe, how to watch water move. The pace, the relentless slow pace, hypnotic current pulling us back to the Tang Dynasty, a time when time itself moved differently. This video was not just to capture it, was a preservation, a digital amber encasing. Sound of the slow wood, the creak of the ancient hull, the subtle lapping water. This is the rhythm that anchors millions. Legacy built on silence and flow. But the flow hides the flaws and the silence hides the secret. The maker of this perfection remains a ghost, a digital phantom who gifted the world this deep peace, then vanished into the matrix of noise. We search the usernames, we chase the breadcrumbs. We find only mirrors reflecting the emptiness of the search. Why did they create something so profound only to deny themselves the recognition? Was the of creation the reward itself, or was the anonymity a shield protecting? A truth too fragile, too potent to be exposed. The questions linger like mist over the river at dawn. They drift with the current. Of the barge itself, we are drawn back and to the details, to the meticulous rendering of the night sky. Precise angle of the ancient willows bending low. But look closer, look deeper into the shadows. The historians laugh at our obsession. The viewers simply drift to sleep, but there is a frame, a single moment of visual disturbance, secret that refuses to sink into. Analysts call it artifact digital distortion. A tiny speck of light that should not exist in amber flickered deep within the 7th hour of the journey. When the barge passes the ancient river bend at Tsuyama, sudden flash of intense amber light. Not moonlight, not firefly, not reflected star, is a single brilliant pulse, a heartbeat of pure color that vanishes instantly. What is this flicker, this visual anomaly? Is it a mistake, a remnant of the editing processor? Is it a signature, a message left by the anonymous creator? Visual seal placed upon their masterpiece, a secret they encoded into the hypnotic rhythm of the water. That Grand Canal holds its secrets close, it protects its travelers. But this amber flicker suggests the travelers themselves left something behind, something ancient, something volatile, a memory that survived the destruction of dynasties. The water flows still. The rhythm is eternal, but the mystery is fresh. The history we think we know is only the surface reflection. Tang Dynasty barge carries more than slow movement, carries a forgotten warning, a clue that demands to be followed beyond the confines of the screen, beyond the soft light of our bedrooms. We chase the shadow of the creator. We followed the sound of the water now. The amber light leads us down a new tributary, away from the digital river to the physical world, to a remote stone village forgotten By the mapmakers, where the canal still runs wild and unregulated, where the descendants of the barge builders still live, they remember the great fire that consumed the archives. They remember the whispers of the ancient keeper, the one who guarded the true secret of that amber seal. Next time on Ichironico, leave the screen behind. We step onto the dry riverbank and find the last remaining soul who understands the language of that flicker. The old man waits where he is shaped by a fire that smells of burning cypress. He is ready to tell the story of the canal's first secret, the one hidden not in the water but in the wood itself. The journey begins. The answers wait in the smoke. Scent of the resin still clings to the air, and here even now that sticky sweet pine smell, it follows us from to the memory is fire always fire. The crackle came first, the sudden sharp sound then. The heave, blinding amber heave, relentless heat. We watched it consume the archives. We watched it devour the truth. We watched the screen burn the edges, curling brittle black. You remember the sound, you remember the smell, you remember the way the light danced on the water. False dawn of destruction. It was the end, it was the beginning. The fire tried to erase the waterway, but the waterway survived. The water always remembers. Listen closely to the sound of a slow barge fall. Asleep to Chinese Grand Canal slow barge journey, Tang Dynasty. We seek tranquility here. We chase the quiet mind. We crave the hypnotic drift of the past. We are told this is relaxation, this gentle movement, this 24-hour loop of ancient wood meeting ancient water. But Nezrula asks you this. Look past the jade green. Surface look beneath the shadow of the hull. What did the fire hide about the barge? Secret, does the slow speed protect the slope? The deliberate drift is not just for your comfort. It is a demonstration of absolute power, the Grand Canal. Serpent of water stretching over 1,000 miles. It was built on necessity. It was maintained. By terror, we see the peaceful, slow barge. We see the lantern lightly. See the silhouettes of the boatmen guiding the cargo, but do you see the weight they carry? Not just the grain, the silk, the tribute, but the crushing weight of the dynasty itself. Slow journey, the hypnotic slow journey. It hides the immense labor, the callous hands, the banks bent double against the tow ropes. We think the sound is the gentle lapping of the current, the gentle lap, the gentle lap. It sounds like rest. It sounds like peace, but listen, it is the rhythm of exhaustion, the constant demand. The fire taught us that everything precious is flammable. The fire taught us that history is often smoke. Beautiful haze meant to obscure the truth. The barge drifts it. Glides, the water reflects the moon, the quiet moon. But the Grand Canal was never meant for quiet reflection. It was a logistical machiniad tool for the emperor to extracto control to feed the massive northern cities every slow second of that relaxing stream. Every mesmerizing minute of that Tang Dynasty journey is a monument to unforgiving efficiency. Barges moved only at the speed the emperor decreed. They carried the census data. They carried the taxes. They carried the officials whose word was law. The slow speed, the hypnotic slow speed. It meant no escape. It meant total surveillance. You cannot rush the empire. You cannot hurry the river that sustains the empire. We fall asleep to the gentle sounds. We let the water wash over our modern stress. But the barge journey is a dream built on sweat, a tranquility, built on forced compliance. A beautiful image hiding the cost of civilization. The fire tried to erase the cost. The crackling tried to silence the water. But the slow pace tells the truth. The slow pace insists on the truth. The barge moves slowly. It moves certainly. It is not just travel. It is the relentless march of the state captured in a perfect mesmerizing loop. The barge whispers, the water whispers too. You hear the secret it carries now too. You understand why the fire wanted this memory gone. We must watch the slow barge. We must look for the faces we never see. People whose silence guarantees our peaceful sleep. The slow pace is the key. It holds the trauma. It holds the fire. It holds the forgotten secret of the water's cost. Watch the shadows on the bank. They are not just trees. They are observers. The journey continues. The slow barge floats onward, and the truth sinks deeper and deeper into the hypnotic jade green water. The fire holds. You is here. The cold still breathes outside the frame, a vast, relentless cold that settles deep into the bone, deep into the silk, deep into the memory of the canal itself. We stay close. To the heart of the wood, the amber glow is a boundary, a defense against the whispers of the water. Listen to the crackling pine. hear the pitch bubble and sigh. That sound is safety, that sound is not. But if you lean in too close, if you listen past the hiss of the safe fire, you hear the other sound, the true sound of that slow barge journey. Not the gentle lapping you seek for sleep, huh? The digitized tranquility of the Tang Dynasty, but the heavy dull thud of the frozen shovel. The splintering wood of the overworked rudder, the thin cry of the forced laborer whose clothes were never dry, were never warm. We watched that video for peace, but peace was not the currency of the canal. Currency was rice, the currency was sweat, the currency was a cold, so penetrating stole the will to stand. We smell the burning pine tonight, eh? Sharp, clean, beautiful smell, but centuries ago along that sleeping path, the ribbon of gray water. Smell was human desperation, the metallic tang of too much iron in the diet. Sour stench of stagnant shallows where illness bred, the heavy musk of 100 men sleeping too. Close too cold their breath, frosting on the rough straw mats, we seek the journey, the slow movement, hypnotic rhythm of the barge cutting water. We want the quiet, the deep quiet, but the quiet came only when the sun vanished and the overseer slept. And even then the silence was not rest. The silence was the sound of 1,000 stomachs scramping in the cold. Dark, the silence was the sound of men dreaming off. Dry earth dreaming of a single hot bowl. They dreamed of a fire like this fire, but they never found it. They never reached it. The moral grayness settles like the winter fog in the water. We celebrate the majesty of the engineering feat, the Grand Canal. A vein of commerce, a triumph of will, but who paid the price for that engineering? Who became the forgotten mud, the forgotten stone? Big slow barge journey is built on millions of hurried breaths of short, miserable lives expended for the emperors. Grain. The video is a lullaby, a soft deception, a perfect, soothing tapestry woven entirely from the comfortable absence of pain. We watch the water flow. We watch the shadow stretch. We are hypnotized by the slowness, the inevitable, but if you slow down your own breath and focus only on the heat radiating from the wood, you realize that every beautiful shot, every tranquil frame eyes paid for by the bone ache, the permanent cold of those who dug the trench, those who pulled the rope, those who died right. They're right by the edge of the water that now sings asleep. Crackling grows louder, the light flickers, sending shadows dancing on the wall of our awareness. We are warm, and they were not. We are rested, and they were not. We are seeking escape, and they were trapped in the very beauty we now consume. This fire is not just warmth, it is a moral reminder. It burns away the soft, leaving only the hard truth. The great canal still moves its waters, never stops flowing, it never stops accepting. Tribute of the cold, the tribute of the gray. The rhythm of the barge is the rhythm of history, eh? Slow, beautiful, unrelenting cruelty. And we watch, and we fall asleep to the ghost of their suffering. The air is thick with the scent of burning resina. Scent that covers the deeper, darker scent of the ancient earth of the true cost off that long, long journey. We seek the water's peace, but the peace belongs only to the viewer, never to the builder's watch. The flame, watch the shadow dance, feel the heat on your face, and know that what lulls you to slumber was once the very thing that robbed them of sleep night after freezing, night after freezing. Night, the current slows, now the light fades across the water, a final amber smear on the screen. We have watched. The barge pass, we have seen the shadows shift, but the legacy is not in the wood. The legacy is in the silt, the deep memory, the digital ghost left behind it. Is the silence of the Tang Dynasty brought forward through wires and light a testament, a heavy archive of a life designed for rest, designed for forgetting. Yet we remember, we search, we trace the ripple marks left by the slow-moving vessel. Ask what remains of the person who held the lens, what endures of the mind that chose this specific stretch of water, this specific hour of fading sun. The answers are wrapped in fog, are carried away by the current. They are the whispers, the steady pulse of the canal itself. The legacy is simple, profound, unnerving. The barge moved slowly. The barge moved slowly, always slowly. It moved so slowly that the moving became static. The background became the whole world. It was not relaxation. It was documentation, a deliberate capture of time before time ran out, before the modern clamor drowned the ancient sound. They left us the quiet. They left us the reverberation of history in the whole. Water lapping against the timbers, the clock counting backward, is the echo, the millions of feet that walk the towpath, the millions of lives swallowed by the earth and carried toward the sea. The true mystery of the Grand Canal video is the weight of the indifference, the calculated calm. Suggests not a tourist, but an archivist, not a dreamer, but a curator of absence who tasked them to record the deep, slow passing. Who needed this hypnotic truth locked away in the infinite libraries of the digital age? Was the slow pace a signal, a key, a deliberate of concealment to make us drowsy, to make us look away from the subtle details, the shift in the ochre silt to the almost imperceptible flash of something metallic on the bank? We analyzed the sound patterns, we stripped away the ambient noise searching. For a voice searching for a message, we found only the wind, we found only the water. The water carried everything away, the water carries everything away, but the legacy is stubborn, it refuses to dissolve. Video endures, the loop restarts, the barge moves once more into the digital night. Mystery deepens because the perfection of the calm feels unnatural, it feels forced, like a stage set built for one viewer, for one forgotten secret that only the stillness could reveal. This silent film, this moving painting, this lullaby of the long dead past it, was the perfect distraction while our eyes were drawn to the reflections. Our attention was drifting with the creator, the mind behind the lens. Vanished into the mist, they vanished into the mist, leaving behind only the soothing sound of the river. The final digital trace was not in the video metadata. It was in the way the light fell on the opposite bank, just as the loop concluded to flicker, a calculated absence. Link not to water and earth, but to the sky, the high remote sky, a different kind of vessel, a different kind of slow capture. We thought we were looking at a journey down the Grand Canal. We were actually looking at a starting point. The slow barge journey led us to the highlands, to the frozen peaks, to an aerial vantage point overlooking a place the Tang Dynasty knew well, a place where the ancient Silk Roads met the highest winds. The digital ghost of the canal has opened a new Dore silent transmission, a satellite artifact next time. We leave the water, we follow the vector upward, we look for the eye. In the sky, the second chronicler recorded the slow death of the empire from above, who flew over the mountains, and why they hide their footage inside the deep, slow sleep of the river. Wood still crackled in the echoes of the fire. Gone cold now, but the heat remains a memory of amber glow, a deep pulsing orange. We watched it burn that night. We watched it consume the edges, the brittle whispers of pine, the sharp, clean scent of history burning, burning, burning. That fire changed how we see it, changed how we listen it, changed the silent promise of a slow barge journey. Tang Dynasty, slumber, and this is 7, the deepest cut of the chronicle, where the slow water flows. They promised you tranquility, they promised sleep, they offered you the Grand Canal ribbon of blue silk unfurling beneath the moon for 8 hours of perfect peace. But I ask you now, I ask the silence, what did the canal swallow whole? What secret did the slow-moving water refuse to deliver to your dreams? That is the forgotten secret. That is the true history of the Grand Canal. It is not just water, it is not just travel. It is distance measured in human breath. It is empire measured in mud and muscle. Watch the screen, see the ancient barge drift, drift, drift. So quiet, so peaceful. So perfectly slow, the water glides against the hula, continuous soft whisper. Hypnosis, rest, rest, free, rest now. But tell me who rested then in the Tang Dynasty, who rested when the emperor did not silk move north, that grain move south, the armies be fed by this relentless ribbon. The slowness you crave, the deliberate dragging pace, that is the ghost of logistics, the ghost of overwhelming scale. The river never sleeps, never stops. You see the slow motion, you feel the drag of the rudder, the quiet discipline of the oarsman. You feel the weight of history, but that weight is now your comfort, heavy blanket of ancient toil. But barge moves, the barge moves. The journey is eternal. It is 800 miles of necessity. 800 miles of engineering grief. Think of the men, think of the barges, not the smooth CGI rendering, but the damp wood, the splintered decks, the constant, unrelenting push against the current, against the calendar. They built this piece so you could sleep, they tell. You is Tang Dynasty, but the core of the canal, the backbone of this watery serpent, it was built before the Tang built on the blood of the Sui, built on the frantic, brutal need of a dynasty demanding connection. The labor was colossal, the cost unimaginable. Dynasty paid in lives. The dynasty paid in shattered backs, and we now consume that legacy as a lofi, soothing background. Whom a lullaby built on centuries of exertion. The water flows, and every ripple, every gentle disturbance, every time. The light catches the surface, just so you're seeing the echo of a million shovels, a million hands deepening the cut, making the water move, making the journey possible. Slow barge journey is not just history travel. It is time travel into a system, a massive mechanical system designed not for rest, but for relentless productivity. System so vast it became its own god. Look at Binks now. The blurry green edges of the screen, the tall reeds nodding gently, they seem so untouched, so wild, but they hide the ghosts of the camps, the ghosts of the villages, flatten. Ghosts of the earth moved simply so that the barge could drift. The hypnotic pace is a beautiful, seductive lie designed to smooth the rough edges, designed to wash away the grit. The true Grand Canal, the water that flows beneath your screen, is a monument to power. A perfect example of how true infrastructure is fundamentally terrifying. The boat lulls you to sleep the quiet. Lapping lulls you, but listen closer, listen beneath the sound of the water dew. You hear the straining ropes. Do you hear the whispers of the men who died building the very pathway that now guarantees your quiet slumber? The barge moves slow because the dynasty demands speed. The compromise is the human body. The compromise is the history untold. The Grand Canal is magnificent, but magnificence always has a price. And that price is flowing right beneath you. We journey on. We follow the wake. We chase the dream of tranquil history. But the secret remains locked, and the slow, relentless current. Tihesh fire consumes the wood. IT needs to survive. Listen, hungry. SOU, the wood crackles and spits its last protest day, desperate heat against the indifferent night air, and amber glow bleeds over the faces of the weary bargemen, their eyes reflecting that same tired orange light you. Smell the pine, the sharp scent of pitch and smoke rising toward the indifferent stars. We watch these slow barges drift on the Grand Canal. We seek peace in the Tang Dynasty waters. Slow journey, relaxing history, but this is the forgotten secret. History we choose to ignore for our comfort. What did that water truly carry besides silk and grain? What was the cost of the calm? The cost of the silence. We are still here by the fire's even demands. We look closer now past the scenic slow boat past the poetry of the willow branches. We look at the soot on the hands of the men who move the world. The fire holds the cold at bay just barely. The cold is real. The cold is bone deep. It is not the sudden shock of ice. It is the relentless damp, the chill of the canal water that never leaves the timber. It penetrates the thickest furs, the wet wool, the worn leather. The cold seeps into the bargeman's marrow. Listen to the sound, the rhythmic cough that tears through the blanket of night. It is the sound of the canal claiming its due, the lungs filled with river mist, and the damp air of 1,000 endless nights. The smell is the truth of the Tang journey. It is not just the clean scent of burning pine. No, it is the stale ammonia scent of human sweat layered thick upon the damp wool blankets. It is the river mud drying on their boots, a ferrous metallic tang, the heavy odor of salted fish rotting slightly in the hold, the smell of life pressed too close together too long. The fire watches this truth. The fire is the only honest thing here. Reveals the faces etched deep with exhaustion. The barge master sleeps leaning against a stack of hemp rope. He is the moral gray. He is the necessary cruelty. He demands speed. He demands silence. He demands effort. If he fails, the barges fail. The barges fail. The capital starves. The emperor does not care about the chill in this man's lungs. The emperor only cares that the grain arrives. The grain arrives always. The weight of the empire rests on these men who shiver by the fire. They are the engine of peace. They are the sacrifice to stability. We watch the hypnotic pace of the slow journey. We love the rhythm, but the rhythm is the repetition of pain, the repetition of the rope digging into the shoulder, repetition of the cold sinking deeper each dawn. The canal demands repetition. The system demands repetition. The moral gray is simply this. Does the smooth functioning of an empire justify the splintered bones of the man who carries the rice? Does the comfort of the capital require the grinding misery of the boatmen? They talk in low mumbles words, swallowed by the crackle of The flame? Their dreams are simple dreams of dryness, hey? Warm stone floor, a bowl of hot, unfiltered millet they do not dream of silk, they do not dream of poetry. They dream of escaping the smell and the cold, they dream of stopping the cough. The fire shrinks. Lower now, the amber glow fades to red embers. The air grows sharp and unforgiving. The true cost of the slow barge journey is the human cost. The sensory reality that our relaxing history refuses to acknowledge. The barge master stirs. It is almost dawn. River awaits, the cold awaits, and the burden begins. The constant movement, the constant cold, the moral gray of survival. Cost, the cost, the cost. Chi, water remembers nothing. And it simply flows. It carries the weight of 1,000 years of dust. The dust of emperors, the dust of peasants, the dust of those who built the barge, who steered the barge, who watched the river past them. We spoke of the creators of the algorithm, of the slow journey of the Tang Dynasty shadow play, but what are the stone cutters? What of the men who felt the splintering wood in their hands, the cold sweat on their brow, the silence of the deepest night? Their legacy is not the code. Their legacy is the current, the slow, undeniable current moving south, moving north, always moving. Legacy is the absence. They left no name, no carved signature, no final declaration of intent. They left only the slow breath of the water itself, the unending motion, the hypnotic pull. Deep green water, the ancient green water. This slow journey, this digital sleep aid is not merely history. It is a mausoleum, a digital tomb for the millions of unrecorded souls whose effort paved this pathway. Seek the architect, we seek the single mind that conjured this video from the void. But perhaps the truth is far more vast, far more terrifying. Perhaps the video is just the surface of the canal itself, a reflection that momentarily catches the sun, then vanishes into the deep. Mystery is not who made it. The mystery is why it still calls to us. The sound of the slow wooden hull scraping against the stone bank settle our modern anxiety. Is the sound of time erasing itself, the sound of effort being swallowed by eternity, the effort of the unnamed, the legacy of the invisible we have traced. The digital footprints, the IP addresses, the dormant accounts, the quiet whispers on forgotten forums. Every path leads to a locked door. Every answer leads to a deeper question. The pattern repeats itself. The silence repeats itself. The water repeats. Its self-repetition is the language of the eternal repetition is the shadow of truth. We believe the man known as Z lived in the video lived through this slow journey. Believed he left clues, small offerings hidden in the low frame rate to settle. Shift in the light, the faint scent of opium and old tea on the wind. But perhaps Z, he was not the artist perhaps Yates was the first victim, perhaps you was the watcher who watched too long, who fell so deeply into the rhythm of the slow barge journey that he never returned to the shore. His physical body remained, but his consciousness drifted south with the water. Left a ghost, a residue, a shadow of deep watching. We asked what happened after the barge passed the city gates. We asked what happened when the camera finally ran out of battery or film. The end of the journey is not a resolution. The end of the journey is the beginning of the darkness. The darkness that stretches beyond the frame, beyond the millennium, beyond comprehension. We spoke of fire in the beginning of this chronicle. The crackling fire, the amber glow, the heat against the skin. We spoke of the old documents scorched at the edges, lost to the blaze, but there's one final thing they failed to burn, a secret that was not paper, and not code, something hidden in the earth itself. Beneath the silt, beneath the Grand Canal sound that predates the barge, the Tang Dynasty, the very notion of Time sound that was meant to be buried forever, is the sound of stone shifting. It is the sound of something waking up. Next, we find the lost pit, the subterranean darkness beneath the water, the sound beneath the soothing rhythm, the forgotten secret of the earth itself, the sound that ZHU was desperately trying to drown out the fire still. Burns, burns here inside this memory room. The air thickens with the scent of burning pine, a low hum, a heavy warmth, a deep quiet. Remember the sound of cedar cracking the dry wood, surrendering to the hunger amber light spilling. Across the screen spilling across the slow water of the Grand Canal. The heat was sudden, the heat was deep. We watched the water flow. We watched the fire glow. We seek the stillness, the silence. They promised relaxation, a slow barge journey. They promised slumber. In the Tang Dynasty, Buttmans we pause, it demands we feel the heat first. Heat of the forgotten, the weight of the water. The weight that holds the boat down. We see the surface. The smooth reflection, the gentle drift. They told you it was slow, but they lied about the effort. Look closer, look deeper into the shadows of the bank. Who moves the silk, who moves the grain, who drives this ancient artery of empire. Is not the current you see it, is the muscle, the relentless human engine. We are lulled by the slow pace of the barge. We are deceived by the mesmerizing drone of the journey. The crackling pine reminds us of the true effort. The constant consumption, the necessary burn. Look at the horizon, the endless line of the bank. They are there, the shadow. Trackers, the men with ropes of hemp rough against their shoulders, their backs bent double against the tyranny of the weight. The barge is not floating, it is being dragged mile after painful mile. They are the unseen history, they are the true engine. Ghost labor that powers your peaceful sleep radio. The water remembers the rhythm of their bare feet sliding, sinking, pulling. Mud pulls back, the rope cuts deep. The narrator whispered Tang Dynasty prosperity. But prosperity demands a price paid in sweat and aching tendon, a hidden toll far heavier than any tax. We fall asleep watching this journey, but they never fell asleep guiding it. They walked the night shift, they walked the scorching heat, they walked the thousand miles of the Yellow River, plain all, so that one small barge carrying ceramic and tea could deliver its silent cargo. They told you it was a relaxing trip, but for the trackers, it was war, slow, silent, perpetual war against gravity, against the current, against the sheer unforgiving distance of the empire. Light flickers the amber light of the fire and catches the movement in the corner of the frame. A fleeting glimpse of a rope taut stretching down a line of tension. A boundary of suffering, that is what holds the Grand Canal together. Just the engineering, not just the water, but the endless, unbroken human strain. Think of the barges moving south, carrying rice. Think of the barges moving north, carrying salt, and wood. They moved at the speed of a tired man walking. They moved at the speed of necessary hunger. This slow journey, this hypnotic pace, it is a monument to exhaustion, a deep history of human limitation pushed past the point of breaking. Look at the wake behind the boat is not just water stirred, is the displacement of 1,000 years of labor. The ghosts are trailing the boat. They are not merely shadows, they are the source of the motion, the forgotten secret, the price of the silence. Do you still find it relaxing, now knowing the deep current runs, not on water, but on pain? The pinewood crackles, a quick, sharp sound of surrender. Fire burns low, but its lesson is eternal. Nothing moves without a cost. Nothing is truly slow unless someone else is moving fast for you. Look closer at the screen, look closer at the water. The water remembers, the water always remembers. Pinewood sighs a long, slow sound. It sighs, and it snaps. Amber light bleeds out, spilling across the rough woolen blanket. Momentary solace, say, circle of false sun and the infinite night. We huddle close to the heat. Watch the flames dance their mesmerizing, hypnotic rhythm, but the back is always cold. The front of you, it tells you warmth is real. The shadow whispers that the cold is the truth. The cold is the ancient constant. It sinks deep into the marrow. The cold that follows the river. The same cold that gripped the workers' hands, the hands that dragged the stone and the soil, the hands that moved the earth itself to carve that slow path. Think of the barges moving slowly. The water reflecting the Tang Dynasty sky, a perfect mirror of peace. Lie, a beautiful, terrible lie. What was the cost of that calm service? The cost was breath. The cost was bone. Cost was the endless slow turning of the water wheel of human suffering. We watch the stream for relaxation. We seek escape in the movement of the barge, but the movement was powered by exhaustion. The movement was paid for in life. We watch the journey. To find peace, we steal that peace from the ghosts who built the path. Is it theft or is it tribute? The gray settles heavy on the shoulders. Is never black and white in this chronicle. Is the color of the river mud, thick, wet, clinging mud that pulls. The boots down mud that preserves the secret smell. The sweat rising from the cloth by the fire, not just our sweat tonight. The faint ghost scent of lime and desperation. The Smell of a million bodies pressed against the labor, the smell of wet hemp rope. And uncooked rice. The smoke of this fire now tastes sweet compared to the smoke of their fires, damp willow branches struggling to burn we. Hear the crackling wood, the comforting sound, but listen closely beneath that sound. The echo of the shovels scraping against the limestone, the low rhythmic moan of men pulling too much weight. Sound muffled by the water itself. The sound of water shifting tons of grain for an emperor who never knew their names, who never asked their names. The Grand Canal flows slowly toward the sea, but the moral current runs fast and deep beneath the surface. Beautiful video forgets the gray. It forgets the gray that stained every imperial project. Comfort we consume now is forged in the relentless pressure of command. Hypnotic slow pace of the barge was the absolute maximum speed of a broken body. We seek the Tang Dynasty's quietude, but the Tang Dynasty was a titan built on human dust. We see the smooth water. We do not see the blisters the size of silver coins. We see the distant mountains. We do not see the homes they leveled to make the banks wide enough. Cold bites a sharp reminder the fire struggles to push back the dark. It is a small circle of light against the vastness of history, and that history is unforgivingly gray. The gray is the color of the dust on the grain sack. Gray is the breath misting in the air before dawn. The gray is the moral of the canal. Slow moving, magnificent, deadly, slow. Moving, magnificent, deadly, the luxury of watching without building, the peace of consumption without cost is the deep gray secret we share here by the fire. The water remembers everything. It remembers the joy and the cruelty. It remembers everything, everything, everything. We stir the embers, a shower of gold. Rises and fades instantly, like a forgotten promised sleep now if you can sleep. Beside the cold history, the water waits, the canal flows it, will always flow. Teichi legacy flows a note. The barge is gone, the slow movement ceased long ago, but the silence remains, Thick, heavy silence that settles deep in the marrow. It is the ghost of the water we chase now. Not the journey itself. We sought the peace of the Tang Dynasty canal. We found instead the restless whisper of its digital echo. Listen closely, do you hear? The crackling wood still burning far away. Do you smell the damp mud of the banks miles from your screen? The sensory betrayal of relaxation history? The promise of slumber was the ultimate trap. We fell asleep to the river. We woke to the mystery. The hand that steered the barge in that long-forgotten upload. The eye that chose the frame, the angle, the endless slow drift. Oh, what did they know that we do not dare to? Ask what secret was buried in the rhythmic lap of the waves. The water remembers the weight of that legacy. The water remembers the years of that slow, steady current. The barge was a vessel of history, but it became a vessel of escape. It was never about the canal. It was always about the forgetting. The slow, hypnotic journey was a way to lose ourselves in time, to pretend the world stopped moving just for those 8 hours. But time is relentless. Time moves like the flow of the Grand Canal itself. Always forward, always changing, always eroding the banks. Barge the crew, the slow hypnotic. Pace all were sacrifices to the altar of calm, a digital sacrifice consumed by the need for silence. The screen went dark, the journey ended, but the vibration, the resonant hum of that single hidden frequency, it lingers in the walls of this digital archive. Lingers in the code of the upload that remains incomplete. We studied the flow, we measured the speed, we analyzed the ambient noise, we looked for ghosts in the historical records. We looked for clues in the Tang Dynasty travelogues, found only mirrors. Reflecting our own longing for stillness, this is the ultimate paradox of Waiki Chronicle. The calmer the content, the deeper the secret it hides. The quieter the sound, the louder the truth must be. The silence remains. The silence remains the legacy of the slow barge. Is not the history it showed us. It is the history it deliberately hid. The records stop abruptly. The logs vanish after the 8th hour mark. The creator, known only by the pseudonym XING, vanished. No trace, no farewell, no final word on the digital riverbank. He did not disappear into the digital fog. He vanished into the real world smoke. And we believe the barge simply stopped. Thought the journey was over, but Nizrula has discovered something outside the frame, outside the water. Something. Shane buried far from the slow flow of the Grand Canal, a detour, a hidden trajectory. A path taken not by water, but by fire and dust, a forgotten trade. Route message carved into a piece of petrified pine. It speaks not of the slow barge. It speaks of the sand, the heat, the desert wind. It Whispers of a place where water is a memory of forbidden luxury. The Grand Canal was just the beginning. Relaxing history was merely the disguise. We must leave the river now. We must turn east. The next demands the sun. Demands the heat, demands the impossible silence of the Gobi. What was Xing seeking when he left the water for the sands? What? Was he trading for the hypnotic journey next time on White Tea Chronicle, Tea, Silk Road File, the Tang Dynasty relaxation? He was about to be unearthed. The wood was green and fat. It fought the flame. The wood was green and fat. It screamed defiance. I remember the smoke rising like an apology, eh? The thick column of gray memory. The scent of burning pine sharpens the air, eh? Terrible. Perfume of heat and loss, the crackling sound loud, an immediate rupture of silence, a shattering percussion. We watched the amber glow spread wide, painting the trees, painting the sky, eh? Heat so intense, it felt cleansing. Pure consumption, it was a beautiful. Fire, it's a terrible fire, and when the last structure finally fell, there was a sudden profound quiet. The silence of finished business. That silence, that strange exhaustion, that is the true secret behind fall. Asleep to Chinese Grand Canal. Slow barge. Journey Tang Dynasty. It promises relaxation, it whispers calm. But what if the peace it offers is not rest? If it is merely the exhaustion of history playing itself out and this is 9. We move slowly with the barge. We watch the low shorelines. Drift past. The water keeps moving. The history keeps moving. It is a hypnotic journey, eh? Deliberate slowing of the nervous system. The camera stays low to the water. The eye is forced to follow the wake. Rhythmic churning, the gentle push. The sound of water. On wood, water on stone. Why do we crave this immense inertia? Why do we choose the slowness of 1,000 years ago? And our hyper-accelerated present moment, we seek the Tang Dynasty ASMR. We seek the sound of labor without the feel of the rope. We seek the journey without the danger of the river bandits. The barge glides a floating silk road of digital comfort. Are insulated from the weight of the water. We are insulated from the biting wind. We are insulated from the endless backbreaking requirement of moving grain and tribute and power across an empire. The Grand Canal was not built for sleep. Grand Canal was built for dominion. It was built for control. It was built on the backs of thousands of hands. That ached hands, that broke hands, that fed the slow currents when you fall asleep to the slow barge journey. Whose history are you truly consuming? Whose fatigue are you borrowing? Whose quiet suffering becomes your perfect lullaby? Look closer at the screen. The greens are muted. The light is soft. It is designed to lull, designed to pacify. The journey itself becomes an endless loop. The gentle wash of the wake, the repeating pattern of the bank's repetition, is the oldest trick of hypnosis. The water repeats. The rhythm repeats, the world recedes. We are told this is relaxing history travel, but is it history or is it a dream of history? A carefully constructed fantasy of imperial efficiency, a quiet, polished memory that burns away the mess. Think back to the fire, the beautiful, awful necessity of that, burning the Tang Dynasty Grand Canal was a fire of infrastructure. It consumed resources, it consumed lives, it consumed distance, it burned away the separation between the north and the south. It created one long liquid artery of unified power, and now centuries later, we invite that current into our bedroom. We use the sound of its ancient flow to quiet our modern anxieties. We trade the stress of the algorithm for the stress of the ancient tide. The water keeps moving. The burden of the barge is invisible to us now. We hear only the gentle lap, the soft creak of the wood under minimal stress, but the barge journey holds a secreta. Forgotten truth about that golden age. The Tang Dynasty needed this river. To survive it was a necessary, exhausting, continuous requirement. If the barges stopped, the empire starved. If the current failed, the power failed. So when you close your eyes and the barge drifts slowly past, remember the fire that built it. Remember the fire of labor, that the peace you feel is the final resting state of immense effort. Deep, slow peace purchased at high cost. We are drifting. Now we are almost asleep. The screen glows faintly in the dark room. The barge moves slowly, slowly, slowly moving you deeper into the ancient quiet. But whose quiet is it? Whose quiet? Are you stealing for the night? We must investigate the silence. We must investigate the sound. Must understand the true commodity of this slow sleeping river. The water keeps moving. History keeps moving, and we fall deeper and deeper into the memory. The perfect, soft memory of the Grand Canal Tang Dynasty. Sleep now, if you can dare to sleep. The Coals sigh a sound like old men settling into sleep, the scent of burning pine pitch plains. Low a sweet, sharp perfume masking the deeper cold. Outside this amber glow, this fragile circle of warmth, history of the canal waits. It waits frozen in the black. Tang night a weight of wet earth and impossible toil. We watch the slow barge journey. Now for peace, for a gentle drifting towards sleep. We forget the sound, the real sound, the heavy sound, the rhythmic groaning of rope against rough skin. Canal was not built on silence. It was built on the wet heave of shoulders and the curse swallowed. Back down the throat. The moral grave beauty is thick here. It is thicker than the winter mist rising off the river. How many thousands found their final rest beneath that slow flow, that endless muddy ribbon of water. The sound of the water hides the sound of the man. The water remembers the man. The cold bites deep out there, steeled by a memory of absolute hunger. Think of the men pulling the barges, not the scholars, not the poets, not the emperors. Think only of the laborers, the nameless hands there. Breath misting sharp white plumes in the pre-dawn air, their clothes stiff with canal water freezing solid to their skin. They smelled of old sweat and desperation. They smelled of cheap fermented grain and the raw sting of iodine from rope burns. Air they breathed was a constant Achaean ache that settled deep in the lungs, deep in the bones. This is the hidden cost of the Great Sleep video. Hypnotic sway of the slow bargees built upon the unrelenting pressure of the dynasty repetition is. The language of labor, the foot falls, the chain pulls the breath, hitches over and over and over. The mud sucks at the worn straw, sandals suck, and release a sound that never stops, never change day into night into day. The barge must move. Forward, always forward, the emperor demands the grain. North demands the south's bounty and the bodies pay the tariff. The gray is absolute here. Seek beauty, we find death, we seek peace, we stand upon suffering. The fire crackles, mocking the cold. Tiny rebellion of heat, we sit here safe from the sting of the ice wind, but we cannot escape the cold truth. The canal demands its due even now. Whispers of the lost workers rise with the smokiest silent chorus beneath the calming sounds of the water. Listen closely to the video's low hum. Is that just the current moving past the hull, or is that the sigh of generations released? A slow sigh that repeats, repeats three. The journey was not slow for them. It was eternal. It was the duration of a short, bitter life measured by the drag of the heavy rope. The sound of the water remembers the rope. The cold remembers the man. Canal remembers the tall, and we watch now. We watch for sleep. We watch for quiet. We find the quiet we seek, but the cost of that quiet is heavy. It is too heavy for silence. The great silence settles now. Dust motes dance in the final amber light. We have traced the line of the lost endeavor. The great endeavor stretches far beyond our immediate sight, far beyond the written scroll. The stones remain monuments to persistence, but the true legacy is not the stones, they said it. Is the silence that follows, the deep, resonant silence. We spoke of the emperor, we spoke of the architects, the brilliant minds. Charting the flow, but who spoke for the hands that dug, the hands that lifted? Millions who dissolved into the landscape like morning mist upon the vast dry plains. They vanish completely. Their names are whispers lost beneath the grinding stone. The very weight of history is built upon absence, upon the unwritten story. The nameless, we measure the mountains they moved. Calculate the water they diverted, but we cannot measure the cost of one human life forgotten, one memory erased by. The efficiency of time, the great mystery, is the blank space. Shadow beneath the foundation, the historian records the treaty and the triumph, but the historian rarely records the man who coughed, whose breath gave out under the midday sun, whose family waited by the river bend for a return that never turned. The river still flows. The canal still carries the weight of trade, but it also carries the weight of that forgotten sorrow. The hypnotic lull of the water hides the cold fact. We look now. We compiled. We see the finished masterpiece, the flowing watercourse. We see the triumph of engineering, but try to feel the cold breath that rises from the deepest foundations of the aqueduct. It is the accumulated chill of sacrifice, a sacrifice demanded by ambition, an ambition that knew no limits and demanded everything. And legacy is a riddle built of mud and mastery, a riddle we can never fully solve. We are drawn to the grandeur, yes, to the soaring arches, the meticulously fitted granite, but the intellect is gripped by what is missing, by the records intentionally destroyed by. The gaps in the chronicle that yawn like forgotten graves. That holds secrets that defy the official history secrets whispered only by the dry scent. Forgotten clay secrets told by the relentless wind. The official narratives tell us of unity and purpose of a golden age secured by diligent construction, but the earth itself remembers the forced march. Sudden hunger, the crackle of the overseers. Whip across the worn leather. The stone remembers the fear. The fear is etched into the very core of the construction, hidden deep beneath the polished surface. We have explored the surface of this colossal achievement we have mapped. The paths of power, but we must now descend. We must descend into the personal space of the vanished builder, the man who carried not just stone, but a small precious object, token of home, a small copper mirror perhaps, or a worn piece of jade. We must look closer now, closer than the scholar, dares closer than the emperor ever permitted, because they say the emperor's most trusted scribe, a man named Zhao Li, did not just record the successes, he recorded the dissenting voices, the dark prophecy, and they say before he too vanished, Zhao Li hid his forbidden chronicle, not within the walls of the library, but within the structure itself, a final of defiance, a final testament. This hidden book, this secret history, it is said to be entombed in the western watchtower. One that sits silent and crumbling on the edge of the forgotten oasis. It waits there still. A dangerous truth wrapped in dried parchment. Truth that could unravel the very fabric of the established kingdom. A truth that could rewrite everything we believe. We know about the Grand Canal, about the empire, about the fire that all next time we breach the silence, we seek the Tower of Jiao. Li, we seek the Forbidden Chronicle, we seek the words that were never meant to be read, we seek the mirror. That holds the terrifying reflection of the truth hidden beneath the dust. For 1,000 years we will look for the entrance, but what happens when the hidden door closes behind us when we are trapped inside the silence with the most dangerous legacy? Of all, you remember the fire, the wood splitting, slow, the sound of the sap weeping out. Low hiss, then the high crackle, that amber glow that promised warmth. A terrible comfort, the scent of burning pine, sticky, sharp it filled the hollow space behind your eyes. It was hot on your cheekbones. It was the edge of the world, the only light left you. Remember the fire because it burned away everything that was untrue. Everything that moved too fast. We watched the slow barge journey. We seek that sleep, that deep, quiet Tang Dynasty rest. That did you ever truly look at the water? Did you ever see the secret is forgotten now, lost in the drone of the motor lost? In the synthetic relaxation track, the Grand Canal, the great serpent of the emperor's will, it wasn't built for lullabies. Was built on bone, it was built on command. 1,000 miles of dredged mud and absolute power. We watch the barge move slow. Slow, it is peaceful, it is hypnotic. The gentle lapping sound the water against the hull, but that slow movement, that perfect pace of travel, it was enforced, it was regulated. Every measure of grain, every tax receipt controlled by the silence of the journey look. At the water, it is murky green, the color of jade and regret. The water holds the secret, the forgotten secret of the Tang Dynasty sleep video. We are searching for tranquility, but we are looking into the deepest engineering of control. The barge slides. Past the reed beds, past the low mist, you hear the distant flute, you smell the river mud, the cool damp earth, but you are missing the pressure. The invisible weight of the dynasty resting on that hull. The barge carries tribute rice-soaked taxes. The barge carries the emperor's eye. It is slow because hurry means chaos. It is quiet because noise means dissent. The barge is not transporting relaxation. The barge is transporting the illusion of stability. Watch, we listen. We fall into the current, the engineered current of historical removal, the labor that carved this earth, the countless men who died to feed the north, the exhaustion, the unrelenting sun. This water holds all that weight, and still it moves slow, perfectly paced for your slumber, perfectly paced for historical, forgetting the Grand Canal is history's most successful sedative. We seek the slow life, we seek the soft journey. We are so tired of the modern speed, so we turn to the Tang Dynasty. We seek the drone, the gentle rhythmic push, but we are lulled by a machine of state, a system built to ensure that nothing changed too quickly. That slow barge, that perfect hypnotic sway, is the motion of ultimate power, is the rhythm of an empire that demanded stillness. The crackling wood, the amber glow, the memory of the fire returns to us now. It returns because the fire's real. The fire's unpredictable. It offers a different kind of warmth. The Grand Canal offers quiet, but the fire offers truth. Which one allows you to truly rest? We are on 10 now. We have drifted deep into the mist. We have accepted the pace. We have surrendered to the sound. But the question remains, if the whole dynasty was built on a perfect hypnotic pace, did anyone on that barge ever truly sleep, or were they listening? To the sound of control, we watch the water, and we forget to look at the shadows on the bank. The shadows that move, the shadows that watch the silent barge move on slow. The real journey is just beginning now beyond the sleep. Beyond the calm, beyond the tang, the flame is breathing low, now just a pulsing ember. Heart against the biting night. We stay by the fire, we must stay here, because outside the circle of its amber glow, the Tang Dynasty cold still waits. It is a cold that settles into the bone, not the soft cinematic mist they sold us. This cold is the deep truth of the canal journey, the truth that was edited out of the slow barge travel loop. Listen. To the wood crackle, it sounds like brittle rice paper sounds, like the snapping of tired muscles under the endless weight of the cargo. Grand Canal narrative promised peace, a languid drift towards sleep. But the real journey smelled of something else entirely, not clean river water, not pristine. Jasmine tea, it smelled of wet hemp, rope, sour perspiration, and the constant metallic tongue of fear. That the towpath would crumble, fear that the overseer's whip would whistle, fear of the cold that seeped into thin cotton tunics. Breathe in the scent of burning pine here by this fire, but we remember the scent of the empire built on forced peace. It is the smell of poverty disguised as picturesque scenery. The barges move slow, yes, so beautifully slow, but every millimeter of that journey was purchased with human ache. The pain was the fuel, the fatigue was the current. We traded their grinding exhaustion for a relaxing history travel. We traded their endless waking nightmares for a lullaby. The moral gray is not subtle. It is painted onto the soot-stained faces of the men pulling the ropes. The film offered us a dream of perfect stillness, a silent, unmoving surface of water reflecting the moon. But if you listen beyond the flute music, beyond the gentle lapping sound, effect you hear the real noise of the Tang Dynasty canal, the wet, heavy sigh of the riverbanks collapsing under too much weight, the soft scraping sound of frozen feet against the mud path hour after hour after hour. The wind does not just whisper. It carries the sound of the rope stretching too taut, threatening to snap and take a man with it into the freezing water. Sensory cost was astronomical. Imagine the cold reaching your ears, turning them numb. Imagine the taste of stale barley. And the bitter cold water, the only nourishment, the aesthetic beauty of the canal documentary demanded a sacrifice. It required the erasure of suffering. It required the quiet removal of the men who built the scene, who pulled the barge, who knew nothing of the soothing sleep their labor would later provide for a distant future audience. They were the ghosts in the machine, the shadows that kept the barge moving. Sit close to the flame, here close to the heat, close to the illusion of safety, but the heat cannot melt the memory of that cold. Those sounds, those smells, the cold reality of the moral gray persists. It asks us a difficult question, a necessary question. How much suffering are we willing to ignore for the sake of a perfect aesthetic? How many frozen laborers for a perfectly relaxing sleep aid documentary? The barge drifted on screen, a symbol of serene motion, but its drift was powered by the weight of empire, the weight of the dynasty, the weight of human lives, treated as less than the timber they towed. The cold wraps around this memory like a shroud. We try to find warmth in the crackle, but the sound only reminds us of the brittle edges of that forgotten history. The Tang Dynasty Canal was a highway of beauty and despair, a masterpiece of logistics and human cost. The smell of smoke is comforting now, but the scent of distant sour rice wine and sweat lingers in the mind, lingers in the shadow. Journey was slow. The pain was fast. The cold was permanent. The cold was permanent. We stay by the fire. We stay by the truth. We cannot look away from the cost of our sleep. The journey ends now. the embers whisper, promise promises of return. We have sailed 10 episodistant currents of the Yangtze nights watching. The slow barge journey. The air is cool now the heat leaves the stones. The deep history settles in the dust. The barge drifted across a channel of Timana. Just a channel of water. We sought the filmmaker. We sought the source. We found only echoes of perfect, light, perfect, slow movement. The question remains hanging in the smoke. Was it just footage or was it memory made visibly forgotten secret given form? The screen glowed amber and dark green. It invited us to rest. We did not just watch history, we inhabited it. We smelled the wet reed mats. We felt the pull of the water's slow, relentless rhythm. Barge journey, the long, slow journey. It was a perfect illusion, a technological ghost will. Built this dream who gave us this solace. They left no Trachano digital footprint, no farewell. No told me the river flows on. Creator disappeared like mist at dawn, a final mystery wrapped in silk and shadow. But the legacy is not in the maker. The legacy is in the watching. The legacy is in the stillness. We stopped running here. We stopped seeking the frantic rush of tomorrow. We learned to breathe with the water slow and slow out. The comments became a harbor shared silence, a collective sigh. Thousands of you found home on that slow barge or wooden vessel moving through the Tang Dynasty. It was not about the history lessons. It was about the peace, the deep enduring peace. The memory of the canal will not fade. Is etched into the algorithm. It is pressed into the quiet places of the mind. The video survived the purges, the updates, the deletion attempts. It refused to vanish. It became essential. The boat drifts. The journey ends. The camera stops. But the current continues. The legacy is persistence. The mystery is the quiet power of stillness itself. Think of the silence of the oars dipping. Think of the amber light on the water. Think of the forgotten knowledge used to film that perfect slow moment. Did the creator intend for this commuter tide? They know they built a refugee, a sanctuary of 7 hours of quiet flow. We may never know the Namu, may never see their face, but their gift remains a deep, slow stream in a frantic desert. The fire now shrinks down. It becomes a pool of bright orange light. The wood crackles one last team, a soft sigh, exhausted. Heat the edges turn gray ash dust. The scent of burning pine recedes. We are left with the cold stone and the enduring knowledge that some stories are meant to be slow, some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, some journeys never truly end. The heat fades. Now completely fades, darkness settles. Nazrullah remains, watch the water, always watch the water until the next journey begins. Good night, good journey, good quiet rest.